Today on Cherry Pickin', we put on some vintage, period correct performance goodies on my 69 Mach 1. And then potentially wreck the motor. Can't win them all. That's right, today we are hopping up my 69 Mach 1 by putting on some period parts and goodies to give it a little bit more performance. If you're a new watcher here on the channel, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoy this type of content. My name's Aaron Cherry, and I build old classic American cars, mostly Fords, but hey, every once in a while we dabble in something different. And in fact, I've got a 62 Corvette and a 59 El Camino that are both going to be on this channel in a few weeks, so keep your eye out for that if that's what you enjoy. Otherwise, this is my 69 Mustang Mach 1 that I purchased from my father just over a year ago. I got it running days before, actually the day before, Power Tour West 2024. Drove it down the drag strip at a blistering 15.8, maybe. And so far, I've been turning it into my perfect daily driver, which is my whole goal with this car. So, if you enjoy this video and this type of content, leave a like, comment, subscribe, because you're going to see a whole lot more of it. But today, we're going to make this thing even better. Now, if you've watched any other videos on the channel, you'll know that this Mach 1 is basically stock. There is literally nothing done to it. Only one thing, well, two things. Well, yeah, two things. Two things have been done to it. One, it currently has a Duraspark 2 timing system in it with a SVO Motorsport box module, whatever you want to call it, that does have a 8,000 RPM limiter, which this stock 351 won't ever go to, so not worried about it. The second thing is it currently has a different carburetor than stock on it, and I'll explain that in just a moment. But today we are putting some period correct pony parts, whatever you want to call them, that are just gonna bump up my horsepower just a hair, nothing crazy, and some really good stuff, some rare parts. Let's get into what's here. So last thing I did on this thing, besides the Comet wash and fixing the starter, I actually ended up replacing our solenoid. Our solenoid went bad, but I put a shaker hood on this thing, and that actually did, to me, make a slight difference at wide open throttle, and the shaker hood really was kind of more of a aesthetic mod. But we're going to keep continuing on with really aesthetic mods more than anything by putting on some cool parts that well, I'm pretty excited about, so let's just show them to you. The thing is, I'm actually less upset about having to change it, because even though changing two starters in like 2 weeks, oh, that's loose. Just tighten that up. The thing is about having to change two starters in 2 weeks is it's not really the changing it, now that I know how simple it is on these small blocks. It's more the fact that new parts are just that bad. So let's get her out of here. Oof. All right, you come in with me. All of my jumper cables seem to suck, so I'm not gonna tell you that you should do this. But that's what I'm going to do. It works. Didn't like it, but it works. And my camera battery is about to die. All right. Try number 2. We are back, and well, I'll be honest, I'll be the first one to admit, old starter may not have been bad at all. Kind of just realized that the 2 bolts I had into there were a little bit loose, so could have just not had good ground, which is, you know, not ideal, but hey, we got a new starter again, so I guess there's that. Go ahead and throw these to the side. I guess we can try it out, see if it works. No? Still nothing. Okay. Well, you know, after some troubleshooting, sometimes you find out that not everything's what it seems. Came over here and, well, I'll just show you. If I take my screwdriver here, hear that? That's the solenoid clicking. But makes you think, yeah, that's the solenoid works. But then if I take my jumpers here, so other than welding, oh, that's hot. Other than welding some jumper cables together, I think I've got a bad solenoid, even though it's clicking and making the noise. But you know, Fords. So I guess this is an opportune time to put on a good used solenoid. And in fact, I've got the perfect solenoid for the job. Let me go get it. This is a heavy-duty style Ford starter solenoid. They use these on big motor cars and much like trucks and Cobra jets and stuff like that. So this is totally overkill for the job, but it will work perfectly for our needs. So, gonna disconnect the battery. So that's cool. Starter was probably totally fine. Just solenoid kicked the bucket, which, you know, we're all about upgrading here. So as I was saying before my camera rudely interrupted me, pulled solenoid off. Really the best used parts you can find are the ones that are off your own vehicles, like this one that's off my 62 Thunderbird that did run and now absolutely positively has no chance of running in the near future at all, especially now that I stole its solenoid. It's like taking its lungs. Anyways, oh man, now we gotta make sure everything fits. Wipe off the dust there, look brand new. All right, now gotta put everything back. Oh, I like that. All right, let's try it now. Can't really jump this one as easy because of the design, so hopefully it just works. Come on, baby. Works just fine. All right. Man, oh man. I hate cars. I love them, but I hate cars. Sometimes just a faulty solenoid that works perfectly fine 1 minute and then dies a second later. That's going in the trash. I gotta go put that in the trash now. What you know about that, son? I can't really reach under there, so that's all you get. I've still got a very noticeably loud click. Can you hear it? I can. And I'm gonna ignore it. Call that done. I do need a new battery hold down, but I guess I'll get the correct one this time. Moral of the story is check the cheap parts first. Forgot you were rolling. Oh, ooh, shiny stuff. Now we're going to be doing a few things today, like changing over our carb from the already upgraded carb to an even better carb, as well as painting my valve covers, and most importantly, if I slide this guy over, we're going to be putting on this aluminum intake. Now, this may just look like a regular Edelbrock aluminum intake or something similar, but it's not. It's better. This is a period correct C9OX 9424A aluminum high riser intake from the Ford Muscle Parts program back in '69. This is one of the coolest pieces you can own if you own a 351 Windsor Ford vehicle back in 1969. Today, this intake is getting to be more and more rare, and they're going for hundreds and hundreds, if not at this point thousands of dollars for the special and better date codes. Now, this intake may look very familiar. It's very, very similar to the Edelbrock 4F or F4B intake from the 70s. You may know it if you're an older guy and ran this type of stuff. And honestly, to this day, the Edelbrock intake, the RPM Performer, I believe, dual plane intake, is very similar to the setup. Now, this isn't exactly the most high performance intake you could run for the drag strip. However, this was the perfect bolt-on modification, what Ford would call a stage 1 back in '69, to have a better flowing and slightly higher horsepower number. Now, the reason that these intakes are so special and so highly coveted in the period correct '69 Mustang and other '69 Ford product world is because these were actually the same intakes made by the Buddy Bar company that made all of the aluminum intakes for the Shelby cars and all of the Shelby made vehicles. So Cobras and GT350s, GT500s, same company made those intakes and made this intake. So this is literally the same exact intake as a '69 GT350 Shelby aluminum intake for a 351 car. Physically the same. The only difference is it doesn't say Shelby here, and this one actually, because it's early, we think, it also doesn't say Ford. Sometimes they could say Ford, but it's got all of the correct numbers, and this is a factory Ford part. You could just buy it over the counter. As I mentioned, it was part of the Ford Muscle Parts program. Now, this intake specifically is a very, very early one. It's actually dated 9/29 of '68, which is one of the earliest ones we found. If you don't know, the way Ford made their cars is they actually started the new model year in August of the previous calendar year. So August of '68 is when the very first Mach 1s for '69 were coming out. My car is actually a very early September build. It was finished on September 9th, I believe, of '68, which means that this 9/29/68 intake is perfect for this vehicle if you're a date code guy. Now, most people aren't. Most people don't care. I kind of think it's cool. I don't pay more money for it because of it, but if I can find the date code matching stuff, it is kind of nice to have because it really is a great example of what a day 2 car from back then would look like, or an OEM plus, some might say. But I like to think that it's definitely like a day 2 type thing. Somebody would go into the Ford dealer with their Mach 1 they just purchased and go to the parts counter and say, hey, I want to buy an aluminum intake and put it on my car. And that's what this would have come from. This thing has a part number of C9OX-9424A. There was a B variant, and I believe the B variant was for 289 and 302 cars, and the A was for the 351 cars. Because 351s were new for the '69 model year, this is a completely new intake. It's got extra bolt holes, and it's physically larger due to the larger deck height size of a 351 Windsor. As you can see on this one, I also have a little spacer. We may or may not run this. I kind of have to because I really need the PCV. Okay, this thing's like echoing. I need the PCV, but this is actually a factory Ford, like Boss 302 intake spacer, carb spacer, whatever you want to call it. Anyways, it's stamped right there. Focus on this. Fumoco, I don't know if you can see it, but this is actually a Boss 302 carb spacer, so kind of neat. And it has the PCV port, which is what I need to run my Holley style carbs. If you look at this intake, you'll see it has the firing order on the back side, the part number on the front. We've got the date code right where the thermostat housing goes, and on the back side of it, you can see that Buddy Bar casting underneath. This thing is kind of, for me, one of the ultimate cool parts you can put on your '69 Mustang or '70. It's just a really neat accessory, and for a 351 car, I think it's really cool. Now today, besides this intake, like I mentioned, we're going to be painting my valve covers to match my shaker scoop with the satin finish and the ribbed aluminum raw. Anyways, as well as potentially changing my carburetor. I'm not entirely sure how that's going to work out. We're going to swap it. Currently, it has a C9OF-R carburetor, which is actually the recommended carburetor by the Ford Muscle Parts Program catalog as the upgrade for 351 as well as 289s and 302s. It is a 600 CFM. It runs great. It's nothing to complain about at all, actually. It runs really nice. And it probably would benefit from the better flowing ports and longer ports of this dual plane aluminum intake. However, on my wagon currently, we actually have a C9AF-U. Is it a dash U? I don't know. It's a dash something. Can't remember. But the carburetor that's on my wagon is actually a 735 CFM from a Cobra jet, or Universal 735 for Cobra jets. And we're going to run that on the Mustang just to see what it's like, and I'll explain why in just a second. So we're going to get into it in a moment. So if you want to just see me putting all these cool parts on and doing all the hard work and stuff, go ahead and skip ahead to the time that's on the screen. Right now, we're going to go back in time and do a little bit of a history lesson for those who are interested, because this is the stuff that I find really cool. So let's go look at some catalogs. So I'm going to go ahead and just slide that guy over there for now and put down some catalogs that are from my father's literature collection. Like I said, big Ford guy, lots of Ford stuff. We do have other things, but Ford happens to be the one we have the most of. If you've never seen these before, these are factory Ford performance part catalogs. We have the hyper parts for the big blocks, and to start the argument, Ford did use the phrase big block and small block on actual Ford literature. This big block engine refers to the 390, 406, 427, and 428 CID engines. So the FE family, they refer to as big block. And this is actually a 1968 catalog that explains basically how to run your FE motor as a NHRA drag strip race car. All the specifications needed, the upgraded parts, how to modify, what fits in the rules of the 68 NHRA classes of stock, super stock, and on, and what you can get away with. So this is a really cool, neat piece of history. Plus, it also has a lot of tech tips. Yeah, tech tips from back in the day. So if you wanted to run your vehicle exactly how they did, you could. And one of the arguments that constantly gets brought up about old cars is that old cars at the drag strip didn't run fast numbers, blah, 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 when stock, and that's only kind of partially true. It's what fast is relatively. Now, back in the late 60s, rubber compounds were not where they are today, so obviously a lot of people couldn't run any faster because they didn't have the rubber to handle it. But just looking in here, we can see some of the Ford racers from back in the day, and it actually discusses some of the times that these guys were putting out on bad rubber, I would say, consider bad rubber, compared to today. And even talks about the fact that a completely bone stock 428 Cobra Jet Mustang, so a 68.5 R-Code Mustang, bone stock, untouched, will run 13.6 seconds at 103 miles an hour. Now, that doesn't seem crazy super fast by today's standards for stock vehicles. I think stock 5.0 Mustangs run faster than that now. But for back in the 60s, when the tire technology wasn't there, and to be honest, the gearing technology wasn't entirely there, this is impressive for a big motor that puts out. Apparently specified at 335. Of course, that's gross, and we record net now. But with a slightly modified super stock, and super stock is different camshaft, but a lot of stock parts still, they were running 1149 at 120. So that's very, very mild modifications, and they were running in the mid-11s and sometimes the high 10s even, if you read some other stuff here. But the important thing that I have here is the Ford Muscle Parts catalog. A little bit of a history lesson. Ford was, as you may or may not know, was really big into racing in the 60s. They were about total performance throughout the 60s, and it started really with 1961, 1962 was very, very heavy in drag racing. They would race Galaxies and try to figure out, the 390 had just come out in 61, and they had wanted to run classes. So there were multiple Ford-backed teams as well as dealership teams that would go out and race cars. in the early 60s. And then Ford transitioned and they wanted to do the Monte Carlo Rally. So they created the Falcon Sprint, which raced at the Monte Carlo Rally and actually did extremely well. I think finished, if I remember correctly, 8th overall in the first year, which is impressive considering half the vehicles didn't finish. Out of 100 vehicles, 100 or so, someone's going to correct me, but doesn't matter. And then, as many of you know, as shown in the Ford versus Ferrari movie, Ford basically created the GT40 program to beat Ferrari at Le Mans, as well as make Ford in America a competent and respected force in the world racing industry. By the mid-60s, Ford had come out with the 427 and the 427 SOC motors, the single overhead cam motors. Those motors were very, very dominant at the drag strip as well as in NASCAR, and the 427 SOC motor was actually banned from NASCAR. It was the first engine that was explicitly banned, beat Dodge out by a few years. Now, there were no vehicles that came with a 427 SOC motor, but there were plenty of vehicles, including the 63.5 R-Code Galaxies, that came with 427s from the factory, and you could actually buy a 427 SOC motor and install it in your vehicle to race. It was not cheap, but you could do it. By the late 60s, drag racing was becoming bigger, and classes were getting enlarged, and things were being added, and more rules were being made. But Ford continued to back more and more factory-based teams, and in doing so, created the process that they knew would sell. They would create the Muscle Parts program. The Muscle Parts program was basically a program that Ford created to allow them to basically have the fastest factory racers they could have by creating a bunch of parts for people to buy, and in turn selling cars by winning at the drag strip. So we have here's the catalog, which basically explains all of the modifications, the parts, the necessary items to go faster on the drag strip. And this is one of the coolest, to me, one of the coolest documents you can have. As you can see here, it talks about stage performance and what it's all about. But more importantly, if we get to, there's tips on carburation and how carburation works back then. I mean, it's impressive the stuff that they have. Hot and cold plugs, it's kind of unbelievable. But there's one important section. There's 289 and 302 muscle mods, and there's basically upgraded horsepower kits that they actually list in stages just for bolt-on horsepower versus adding camshafts. Plenty of items. So if you want to do old school period correct racing, this is your stuff. But we're going to get to the 351 section because this is where we're important. 351 muscle mods for the stage 1, which I believe, 34 added horsepower just from the stage 1, from the stock 4-barrel M-Code Mustangs. They would have you add a carburetor, which would be a 4-barrel carburetor that is a 600 CFM, and that would be my C9OF-R carb. They also have it listed as a C8AZ-AD carb. It's basically the same carb, just a different number. The manifold, they would have you do a C9OZ-E manifold, the 9424, which is what this is. The C9OZ is the official part number versus the engineering of C9OX. And it lists it as an aluminum high riser right here in the paperwork. Aluminum high riser. As well as a carb spacer that was a 1/4 inch thick, if needed. And a air cleaner, which was a 360 inlet air cleaner, so just standard 289 hypo style air cleaner, nothing crazy. Just those 4 things, the carb, the manifold, a spacer, which wasn't needed, but they mentioned the spacer, as well as the air cleaner, was to them 34 gross horsepower. And as you can see, and if you look here, that is our manifold that we have sitting right here, as well as the carb that is currently sitting on top of this motor. So to me, the Ford Muscle Parts program is a really cool part of Ford's history. It was the program that allowed regular folk to buy performance parts for their vehicles that they could just bolt on at home if they really wanted to. And they had the knowledge within these books and catalogs that explained why and how you could add these modifications to get more horsepower, like putting a bigger cam in, porting your intake manifolds. There's even references in here to using tube-style headers that are not Ford affiliated that you'd have to get from other sources, but they admit they'd make more power. And so I think it's really cool because back in '69, you had race car drivers like Hubert Platt and Ed Terry racing their Georgia Shaker and other Ford drag team cars, winning a lot with these high horsepower cars ranging from Cobra Jet to 302 small blocks to whatever. And I think it's a really cool piece of history. And so that's why I'm so excited to be putting on this period correct performance piece. Even though realistically, will it add more horsepower? Probably not much. Especially, I already have the carb that it's recommended to upgrade for that 34 extra horsepower. I already have the carb for that, and I have a ram air hood, which may or may not be better than the regular 360 inlet style 289 air cleaner, but this intake should flow a little bit better, and even without any porting or anything, it's got better runners on it. So, and if anything, it lightens up the front by, I don't know, 10 pounds maybe. We'll find out, but history lesson over. I guess we actually have to start doing this. I've been stalling doing this. It's like 1 o'clock now, so now it's actually time to get moving on this. So anyways, let's get to it. Now, the first thing I need to do is actually wash the intake because it's pretty nasty. However, I'm going to go ahead and start up the car, let it run for, I don't know, a minute or two, let it warm up a little bit, get the thermostat opened, and hopefully let the water pump out as much coolant as possible. Of course, this is going to make it hot. All right, I'm going to let this run. Let's go clean an intake. Now, we're not going to do anything crazy. I'm just going to take some simple green here and brush it down a bunch. That's pretty much it, so throw up the time lapse. So we've got the intake over here cleaned up. I do actually have to go ahead and continue scraping off the underside, but we've got all of the intake and valve covers and everything else off of the motor. So I'm basically just going to clean these up, and then we're going to take that guy and just kind of set it in there. So let's do that. Okay, so we're at that point that the intake is ready to go on. I've cleaned out the valley as best I could, and I've got the gaskets there, and I'm using some gasket shellac and the cork gaskets, which, you know, some people may not like. Oh, of course the wind's picking up in my Easy Apple Flyway, but I like the cork gaskets. Kind of dreading doing this. I did lay the intake on before all the gaskets were there to make sure it fit, and it actually sat on almost perfectly. The China wall areas were just nice and crisp and very, very close. Intake ports look all good, so there's nothing left to do but do it. It's definitely a little awkward, but at least it's lighter than the old one. So let's do it. So the best way I've gotten to do this is to just lay it on there. All right, well, it's sitting on there. That's half the battle. Guess it's time to put it all together. Now, unfortunately, because of the way that these intakes are designed, the water jacket on this bolt hole is definitely questionable, and a lot of them have to get repairs over the years. This one we will just have to wait and see. I'll put a little bit of thread sealant on the bolt. Maybe that'll help. I don't know. Same with this side, but torque specs are, well, we'll worry about that when we get to it. But man, does it look good. Can't wait till we put a Big old 735. This thing's gonna breathe. All right. 6 more. All right, now the painstaking process of torquing it down very carefully, because it is an aluminum intake and we do not want to pop it. All right, and it's time for the carburetor, which unfortunately I ran into a small issue. The height of the new intake plus the 1/4 inch spacer makes it so that the shaker scoop actually sits a little proud. It's a little bit taller than I'd like. I could deal with it if I could run it without the spacer, but temporarily I'm going to have to run it with that phenolic spacer because I need a PCV port. Because unfortunately the base plates on these original carbs and this 735 Cobra Jet carb does not have a PCV port. So I'm just going to temporarily run it with a shaker a little tall. Also helped me find out that I think one of my motor mounts collapsed because the whole thing kind of sits at an angle. But in the meantime, we will just run it like this. Now, I actually rebuilt this carb and tested it on this car without realizing that the one I put on it was not a 735. So it's a cool experience to put one on. But we got the distributor back in, all the heater hoses are on, just not tightened. Everything's plugged back in, so other than the valve covers and the PCV, and then I'm gonna go ahead and throw some Lucas oil stabilizer in this thing just to see if it calms down those chatty lifters, if you know what I'm saying. Well, as a wise man once said, when you're hot, you're hot. And this time, I don't mean literally. Yesterday, we painted the valve covers for this guy, and they turned out pretty good. Pretty pleased with how they turned out. And well, I couldn't help myself, so I put them on. Got it all cleaned up and dressed up and put them on and thought, well shoot, that's all that was left to start the car, so why don't I start it? And then all of a sudden there was this really bad knocking noise. I'll throw in the clip here. And realistically, my first thought went to where most of y'all probably went to, and that was, oh crap, we're done for. But not all is lost yet. And I'm going to continue to lie to myself and tell myself that there's no possible way that a rod knock could have occurred when all I did was change an intake and paint some valve covers. You know what I'm saying? So, what we're going to do this morning is, well, we're going to check into that because there might be a small possibility that something is in one of the cylinders. So, I overnighted one of these little cameras, and well, we're gonna go see if there's anything in there, and if there is, not all is lost, and hopefully we can get it out through the spark plug hole. And if there's nothing in any of them, then I guess we say a prayer and say goodbye to this motor. But not all is lost, so let's check it. Of course, it's already hotter than a $2 pistol this morning, so this will be fun to do. Now, the noise doesn't have any very specific location other than probably near the back, so we're going to try those first. The back 4, 2 on each side. So anyways, come take a look at how our nice little motor looks. As you can see, we did a nice done-up job. It's kind of hard to see with the sun. And I even painted our oil fill cap. But looks good, and it matches the shaker, so I'm happy with that. Of course, there's oil all over everything because I took both valve covers off and ran it just to see if maybe a rocker arm was hitting valve cover. Nope. But, well, let's get these spark plugs out. Take this guy off, which we actually do have to adjust before we're finished here. Of course, it's going to be heating up something good this morning, so we're going to try to get this done as quickly as possible. Ooh. Oops, already cut my finger open. Nice. Don't know how I did that. Well, I guess the good news is this one looks like it's got some metal shavings. However, the plug itself is still not too bad. Let's just take the other one out, just for good measure. This one does not look like there's anything on it. So, I'm gonna go clean up my hand and then we'll stick a camera down there. All right, this thing looks to be on. Now bear with me, I have not used one of these before. So I apologize in advance. All right, well, there's our piston. And it looks like there's some metal shavings in there. I have to spin it around somehow. Oh, what is that? I see something. Let me see if I can get a better. See that right there? What is that? All right, I'm gonna have to turn this thing over a little bit and move it down. Sure looks like metal to me. Let's see if we can pick anything up with something magnetic. All right, well, I moved it down. But as you can see, there's something along the cylinder wall there. So there's that. That is most likely what we are hearing. My hope is that it didn't score the cylinder wall too bad, although unfortunately I have a feeling that it did. Although I don't know if I can get that out, so we'll have to see. I checked the other cylinder and it looks completely fine. I'm probably going to go ahead and check the other back two cylinders just to be sure, but I think that's our problem. So, the unfortunate part is that's a really tiny piece of metal, so I hope that that's enough. We'll see. Well, as you saw, there was some stuff in the cylinder on the wall, and I went ahead and checked the other side as well, and although the spark plugs looked fine, cylinder number 7 definitely had stuff sitting on top of the piston. So I didn't even bother checking the rest, because at this point the heads have to come back off. I'm gonna have to take the heads off, clean all the gunk out of there, hope that it's salvageable, and put it back on and run it. Which is not going to happen in today's video. It's really, I only planned for this to be a 1, maybe 2 day project, and it just turned into a whole lot worse, which, well, aren't we all used to it? But that's why we love doing it sometimes. So, we did get our intake on, and we did get our valve covers painted, which was a big step for me. But we did go about 5 or 6, 7 steps backwards. And now I have to take everything off the top of the motor again and take the intake back off, take the valve covers back off, take off all the front accessories, or at least loosen them, take the heads back off. But hey, maybe while we're in there, maybe we throw a camshaft in her, do a timing set. Why not? Haven't done it yet. So, anyways, not much of a runner at the moment, so this is where I'm going to have to end it off. Sometimes you win some, and sometimes you lose some. So, hope you enjoyed the video. And if you did, like, comment, subscribe. Much appreciated. I'm going to need all the help I can get to redo these heads again. So, see you next time.